Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Uh, in today's video, I'm going to discuss about development in Business Central in Dynamics 365 Business Central. Business Central was earlier known as a prior version of Business Central were known as NAV or Dynamics NAV or Navision. My name is Dhanraj Bansal. I'm based in India. Here is my email ID and the other details. So this video is for people who are going to who wants to learn development in Business Central. It is for beginners, we can say. So, and in this I'm going to discuss about the development environment, how to set up the development environment for Business Central, and table designs primarily. And if you are a beginner, if you want to learn about Business Central, development in Business Central, I recommend this book, Programming Dynamics 365, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central by Mark Brummel, David Studebaker, and others. There was a time about 10 years before there used to be just Microsoft manuals or very less literature about the Dynamics NAV at that point in time, and there were not any books as such. But later on, Packet Publication has done several books. Even I have I have done the technical review of few of the books, and nowadays there are, if not dozens, there are more than 6 8 books related to Business Central from Packet Publication itself. So coming to agenda, we will discuss how to create sandbox environment. Then we need VS Code, Visual Studio Code, for development, and the programming language used is AL, application language, we call it AL. We will see what is download symbols and what happens when we download symbols. We will create app files, extension, or apps. Okay, and how to publish, how to debug, basics of table design. That's what we are going to cover in this video. Components, we will require VS Code, Visual Studio Code, BC Sandbox. So in case you don't you already don't have an access to environment, sandbox environment for learning, exploring Business Central, then you can go to cdx dot this link, cdxtransform.microsoft.com, and you can create your own sandbox environments. Okay, I'm logged in with different user ID, but if you create a user ID using your official email ID, then you can create a new sandbox environment. For example, let me show you that in little more detail. CDX. Okay, I want to sign out from both of these. So using your official ID, you can create a sandbox environment on this link. Once the sandbox environment is created, like this sandbox environment will be created. Once it is created, you can search for sandbox environment, and okay, And if you want to see what all is installed in your system currently, extension management, search for extension management, and there you can see the list of extensions or apps which are installed currently. So for example, currently if we see publisher, everything is Microsoft. So whatever is installed in the current system, there is no customized, there is no third party app installed in the system. We will be using tons apps or extensions synonymously. So and when these are published or installed through app source, these are published as global. But if we later on we will see that how to install these apps using VS Code, and those will be as dev. Okay. So let's get started. We will, in case you don't have already installed VS Code, then you need to install VS Code also. And VS Code, you can get it from this link code.visualstudio.com download. So for getting started with installation with our first app or extension, open VS Code and then Control Shift P or Command Palette. Control Shift P is the shortcut, or you can go to Command Palette. Then AL go. It'll please choose a path to a new empty folder. This is a new folder which will be created. If you give a path to already existing folder, it will give an error. So for example, right now by default it's taking AL project 7, and in documents AL folder, if I give it as training videos, then it is asking what is your target platform. Currently, the latest version is 7 Business Central 2021 wave release wave 1. So I'll be using that, and hence I'm selecting that. So during this process, it has created some files in the system, and now it is asking please choose the server. There are two options into it in this. One is Microsoft Cloud Sandbox, and second is your own server, maybe on premise. So for this video, I'll select Cloud Sandbox. Now, once the cloud sandbox is selected, it creates a launch file, launch.json file. Launch.json file has the server details. It's used for connectivity and all. So now this file is created. Uh, Here I'll have to do one modification. We will have to define tenant, and tenant in the case of Microsoft SaaS online tenant, it'll be here the sandbox that I'm using. I'll have to provide this tenant ID with global unique identifier. Okay, that's what I'll have to define in my launch.json file. Once that's done, we have launch.json file and we have app.json file. App.json file is created by system, and it has the details of app. Publisher, maybe I'll change it to my name. Generally it is the publisher company's name. We can define the version. We can up if we publish one version and later on we modify it, we can update our this version. So brief description, EULA, end user license agreement, and these are the things. And ID ranges, it defines the ID ranges of objects. So for example, here in this case 50,100 to 50,149, these are the object IDs. Context sensitive help, and runtime 7.0, the version of runtime that the project is targeting. For example, we are targeting Business Central release wave 1, so the value is 7.0 here. Once this is done, we can save the changes. Hello world, this is the program which is downloaded as a part of alt go. So this is a page extension. We will cover what are page extension, what are various uh, object types in business central. So page extension, which is extending customer list page, and trigger on open page, it says app published hello world. uh, Let me modify it a bit. App published hello world from hello okay, hello world from Dhanraj Bansal. Let's see what's there in AL packages. In AL packages is the four files are there. We will be using something called download symbols, Control Shift P or command palette. So these are the what is already installed on the server, or what is part of Business Central 2021 Wave 1 base application. These are the object types, various object types in Business Central, starting from tables, pages, reports, XML port, queries, coordinates, control add-ins, page extension, table extension, profile, and all. Uh, in case you have downloaded VS Code, you will have to install certain extensions also. So extensions, for getting your environment ready, you need to install some extension related to AL. For example, in my case, I have installed AL code action, AL extension, AL language. This is mandatory sort of. You will have to install AL language definitely. Others make your life easier, help in the development. So that's why I have installed so many uh, extensions. After installing AL extension only, it will identify the AL file, AL extension files. The files, the programming language which is used for Business Central is AL, called application language. For example, this file hello world.al has an extension, has ending with AL. AL is the extension of this file. It is doing some processing. It looks like I've installed some extension which are a bit slowing down the processing. So next is download symbols. Before starting the development, we need to know what is already there on the server end. What is the base code? For that, we will use Control Shift P download symbols. Download symbols will uh, get these AL package files, and AL package files gets the definition of code base on what is already installed on the server or your environment. For example, in case I delete this AL package folder now, so it was saying symbols have been downloaded. In case I delete this AL package folder, move to recycle bin, and then again go for Control Shift P, command palette, and download symbols. So AL package folder will be created again. The files which are already installed on the server and which are defined as dependencies in app.json will be downloaded. So in app.json there is something called dependencies. So dependencies, currently we have not defined any dependencies, but we might need to define dependencies. For example, if your app is dependent upon already installed app, you have done some customization, some modification in one of the project, and then in the next project, next extension, if you want to use those objects, so in that case you will have to define dependencies. So now it is saying all reference symbols have been downloaded. If you remember, we deleted al package folder and those files were deleted, but now these files are again back in the system. So before publishing the code base, the code modification which you are doing here, in this case, we are doing hello world.al. One page extension is created. So Control Shift B will build this. Build is app will be built. So in after pressing Control Shift B or build, we have got this new file. So app file is created. So it is the publisher name Dhanraj Bansal and training videos from the app.json. In the app, this is publisher and then name, publisher underscore name, then version, and then .af app file. If you want to see what all objects are there in this, so we can click on that and click on all. So it shows there is one page extension in this file. Next step is we can publish it to the server. So for that, uh, either you press Control F5 or F5. Control F5 will just publish it, and in case you want to do publish and debugging together, then we will use F5. So let's say now we press Control F5. Control F5 is run without debugging, and F5 will start debugging. So Control F5, authenticating. Before it publishes, let me tell you one more thing. In launch.json, there is a startup object ID. When we start up when the launcher is when the web browser is launched for Business Central from VS Code, which page, which object should it open? So here we have defined startup object type is page and startup object ID is 22, which is customer list page. So when we launch it from here VS Code, it will launch page 22. And here it is saying success. The package has been published to the server. Okay. And the page was launched. It is opening Business Central environment. Twenty-two or 21? 22. Startup object ID 22. We will see what is object ID 22. So if we go to extension management again and check what all is installed. So there we see publisher Dhanraj Bansal training videos is name, and this is the version, and it is published as dev. It is because it is published, it is installed using VS Code, not from the app source. That's why it is dev. If we install something from app source, it will be global. Now what is the modification that we did? It was customer list page on open page. So let's search for customer list page. So when we open customer list page, it is saying app published hello world from Dhanraj Bansal. So that's because of this extension which we did. Okay. So this is how you publish, how you create your first program, first extension or app, and publish it to Business Central BC. And Customer list page 22. Download symbols. So we saw using download symbols, we get the package, we get the what is already installed on the server and the dependencies which we have defined if anything. Then launch.json and app.json file. In app.json we define the about our app and dependencies. Build is for creating the app. Control shift p. P is for opening command palette, and from there using control F5 we can publish the app without debugging, and if we press F5 it is published with debugging. Control shift F5 is used for debugging only. You don't want to publish the app, but app is already published, but if you want to debug, start debugging, then you use control shift F5. And we have published our first extension, hello world. So next thing I'm going to discuss about is table design. So tables are the containers of the data. Whatever you store in business central is stored at the back end in the tables. So whereas pages are used for data entry retrieval. uh, in business central we don't do direct data entry directly into table, rather pages are used. uh, Pages are of several types: card, list, card part, and worksheet, etc. List page are generally non-editable. So using table design, we will talk about table design. We can do two ways. One is using snippets, or second is wizard. So let's create a very basic table. One thing which we can do is you new if you right click and new AL file wizard, we can use wizards. So using wizards, let's it ask which object type. So table. So it will start from 50,100. Object name, let's say student. We create a student list. Student generally, let's say in any class, school, college, student name can be repeated. Two students with same name can be there, but generally we have registration number or roll number which is unique, which is not repeated. So we will talk about primary key register roll number, which is of type code, data type code, length 20. Data classification is customer content. Then first name, text, let's say text 50. Last name, again text 50. All these are of customer content only. Then maybe address, address to city, postcode, country. We can add other fields also, but let's start with this basic table. And here we have this id in this one, in this particular case I've taken consecutive numbers only, like up to 8. It is not necessary that the ids be in continuous number series. We can have gap also. and pk is primary key. First field by default it takes as the primary key. If required we can change that. Primary key is unique, this cannot be repeated, so in this case we will take roll number as the primary key. So let's complete it. So there is one created due to that blank line in the last. I'm going to remove that. So what it has done is it has created a very basic table. First part is table ID, table name. Table name and field name can have maximum length of 30. It cannot be more than 30. And if there are spaces, we will have to close those into double quotes. For example, roll number was having space, so it is within the double quotes. First name similarly, okay. If there is any field which is not having space, so for example address, this will not require any quote as such, single quote or double quote, but if there is space we need to provide. Then caption is the what will be displayed. Data classification to be classified, let's change it to customer content. The area just after id and all, this area is defining the properties of the table. This is defining the properties of the table. This area is for the properties of the table. Then we have fields. So these are the fields uh, can further have properties and code also triggers, so we will come to that later on. Then next part is keys. Here we are defining the keys. There can be multiple keys in a table. Currently there is only one primary key. First key is a primary key and unique. Then we can have various triggers also. Using wizards, it is not creating triggers by default. So as I mentioned earlier, there are two ways, primarily two ways. One is using wizard creation of table. The second is using snippets. So let's create the new table using snippet. One more table using snippets. So new file, let me give it name table 50,100 we have already created. These object IDs which the table ID which I've given are supposed to be unique. We cannot repeat. For example, we have created a table 50,100 already. We cannot create another table with same ID. So tab 50,101 and let's say teacher.al, and in this case we will create this table using snippets. For using snippets, what we will do is t and table. If we want to create page, we will use t page. So for example, now uh, I'm creating t table. Now my cursor is highlighting at id, so I need to define id. Okay, so 50,101, then the table name is teacher, data classification customer content, then field, my field. For example, here I'll say registration number of the teacher. Data type code 20. Data classification is again customer content. So this is fields area. We can have more than one field. So template has created just one field. We can repeat that. So key one is registration number. Then we have variables, global variables which are defined. It is created. Then we have triggers. At the table level, we have four triggers. Trigger on insert. On insert is executed when you do the data entry from the user interface, from the pages. Okay, so just before the insertion of a record, it executes the code written in on insert trigger. So if we write some code here, that will be executed when the record is inserted. Similarly, when our existing record is modified, on modified trigger will be executed and the code written over here will be called. On deletes, for example, in the database, in the existing database, if a customer has any transactions, if a customer has balance or done any transaction, and if you don't want to allow deletion of that customer, so we can check, go and check whether there are any transaction, whether there are job related entry, sales related entry, or customer ledger entry for a customer, and if anything is found, then we can give error and stop the deletion. So that kind of code can be written in on delete. Similarly, on rename is called when primary key is changed. There is difference between on modify and on rename. On rename is done when is executed when primary key of a record is changed. For example, if you are changing the roll number or registration number in these two tables, then on renumber will be called, will be executed. So far we have created two new tables. One is student and teacher. We have not used created their pages. So as I mentioned earlier, data entry is generally done through pages. Okay, so we will publish only after creating their pages. Now, I mentioned that on insert will be called when the data is inserted through user interface. If the data is inserted through some code, if we write some code and using that, if we insert the a record in a table, then there are three ways when you how you can call insert. Cust some table dot insert within the bracket true, false, or keeping the bracket blank. Let me show you that. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Uh, when you do data insertion through the page, definitely on insert will be called. But if you are doing it programmatically and either your insert is false, within that bracket is false, or insert bracket is blank, or you just do insert, then the trigger will not be called, and the code written in that block on insert will not be executed. But if you want to execute that code, you will have to do insert true. So snippets and wizard, we have seen both the cases. Table properties, we will see it again. So table definition consists of properties, table level properties, then there are triggers. We saw that there are four triggers: on insert, on modify, on delete, and on rename. Properties, we saw caption, and we will see what are the other properties. Then fields, we saw that registration number and first name, last name, etc, etc. So that's on the fields. Fields also have properties and triggers. At the field level, we have on validate and on lookup triggers. And keys also have properties like clustered or not, and what are the components of keys. uh, we have covered example of student table. We will see field group, drop down and brick, and init values. Some init value, for example, there is a if we define a boolean field and okay, back to VS Code. So if we want to see what are the other properties, I mentioned that these are the data classification, this is customer content, this is table property. Then we have caption, then we have other properties also. If we press control and space, it will provide me the list of properties of that area. For example, list of properties for the table. We can define caption, we can define caption ML. Caption is like business central supports multiple language, multi-language, so we can define caption ML also. What are the other properties? Control, data per company, whether it is yes or no. Description is used for internal documentation. If you want to do some internal documentation, the purpose of this table, when it was created or something. And in addition to that, for if it's about just documentation, we can do the documentation at the beginning of the object also. New your story id, user id, for which against which this is created, on which date it is created. Dhanraj Bansal, and then some description, some documentation that's generally done at the beginning of the object. Whatever we enter in the description is not displayed to the user, it is for internal documentation only. In this one we have created only one field. If there are more fields required, what we can do is we can copy this and paste. Field id we can change. It is not necessary that I give two only next number. There can be some space in between also. So let's say first name, text 50. At the field level also there are properties. One of the properties which we have defined is data classification. Then let's see what are the other properties. If we enter and then press control space, we can see the other relevant properties. Blank zero, blank numbers, auto increment. Okay, caption, what is the caption of this field? Character allowed, compressed, date formula, editable, whether this is editable or no. Editable, true. Similarly, let's see what are the other properties. Enabled, description for internal. If this is a decimal field, then we can define decimal places, how many decimal places are there. Extended data type, if it's a phone number or url or email, then we will define extended data type. Field classes, let's see what are the options in field class. Flow field, flow filter, or normal. So registration number is a normal field, but there are fields which are called flow fields. Flow fields are calculated at the runtime and calculated based upon some formula from some other table. For example, if I talk about the base product in customer table, there is a field balance LCY also. So these field balance or balance LCY are calculated based upon the transactions. So there is a table detailed customer ledger entry. So these fields are calculated from detailed customer ledger entry. Formula is defined for that. So if let's see how that works. I'll go to base application, tables, sales line, not sales line. I was talking about the flow field. So in that case, let's talk about customer table. Control F. This is design of customer table. Balance field. So balance field is field class is flow field, and whenever it is flow field we have to define calci formula, how it will be calculated. Okay, so balance field of customer card is based upon detailed customer ledger entry. It's amount field, and what are the filters? Customer number should be field number, initial entry global dimension 1 to 1 filter, 2 filter, and currency code. So that's how the balance field is calculated. So field class is flow field, normal field, and the third option is flow filter. So flow filters are applied on the flow fields. For example, in this case, currency filter is a flow filter. There is another field, Let me search that in the customer table itself. Date filter. So date filter, here is date filter. Date filter is field 55. Data type is date. Field class is flow filter. So field class, three options: flow field, flow filter, and normal field. If you have not defined anything, default value is normal. So if it is normal, we need not define it. Let's again check what are the options here. So for that, field class and control space, flow field, flow filter, and normal. So these are the triggers at the table level. There can be triggers at the field level also. For example, if I write trigger on lookup and on validate, there can be two triggers at the field level in the table. On lookup, where begin end, and the next one at the field level is trigger on validate. Okay, one more thing after keys I would like to discuss is T field group. So field group is defined for let's go back to business central. So for example, we are creating a new sales order. If we are creating a new sales order and we take a look up at the customer number, so here we see number, name, zip code, phone number, and contact. So which all field will be displayed here, that is defined using field group. So here we are talking about customer table, customer. Okay, so lookup is on the customer table. So there we see number, name, zip code, phone number, and contact. So let's go back to VS Code and see the code in the customer table. Base application, tables, customer table, and search for something called field group. So field groups, two field groups, one is drop down and the second is brick. Drop down is the one which I showed you. So there we have defined number, name, city, postcode, phone number, and contact. Let's So number, name, zip code, phone number, and contact. Five fields, right? Number, name, zip code, phone number, contact. City is not there. Why? And brick is used when it is displayed as a brick. Init value, we can define the initial values, default value or init value. Field group, we have seen drop down and bricks. So in case, let's say we want to change the field group. So what we will have to do is we will have to use a table extension. So for doing any modification in the existing object, for example, customer, sales header, or whatever the existing objects cannot be directly modified, but we can still add the tables, we can still add the fields or do the modification in the existing object. That is done through something called extension, table extension and page extensions. So using table extension, we can add new fields in the customer table. We can uh, modify the existing fields, behavior of existing fields, and we can modify the field groups which are already defined. Okay, for example, in this screenshot I am just showing that what are the properties at the table level, so which we show using control space. Here is the field properties. Next one is table property, field properties, triggers, table relation, conditional table relation, example of sales line, flow fields. We have seen what are the flow fields. We have also discussed difference between insert false, and insert. So let's talk about table relation. Table relation is when we go to a customer card. Here we have salesperson code, and in that we get a lookup on another table which is salesperson code table, a list from where we can select. We cannot enter any damn thing here. I cannot write ABC here. If I enter ABC, it will give error. The field salesperson code of table, that cannot be found. So I'll have to select the values from this existing table only. So this is done using table relation. So on our new field, we can define the table relation from where the lookup will be done. So for example, let's say each student, let's say, will have a teacher associated with him, maybe a class teacher or whatever. Or for example, country should be look up on if we publish, let's publish these two, brick. Okay, add drop down, if it has to contain at least one field. So here we will have to define which all field will be used. So let's okay, let me do this field groups thing in the table which is having more number of fields. So let's say roll number, first name, and city. Let me quickly create uh, pages also, a page also for student. I'll create a page using 50,100 dot student list. Here t page, page of type list. So id 50,100, name is student list, page type is list, which table it is based upon, it is based upon student table. repeater group name is okay, name source, it will be like okay. And yeah, we can do similar task. Let me delete this one. I'm going to delete this page and create it using widgets. Page, object name is student list, source table is student table, card type is list. There are 13 types of pages: card, list, role center, card, part, list, part, and etc. So application area, all usage is I'll choose list. Create tooltip, whether it should be created or not. Tooltip is sort of help or guide describing what this field does. So if we see here, there are 5 fields which are shown. This lists the all the fields available in that table. So it is showing system created at, system created by, system id, system modified at. These fields are created by default by the system. These are not these fields are not created by us. So let's say we want to enter roll number first in the list page. First name, last name, address, address to, city, country, postcode, and then finish it. So what, this is the area which is page properties related area. Then we have layout, then repeater. These are the fields. Tooltips specifies the value of roll number field. So this will be displayed when we keep our cursor on the roll number field. Will It is a kind of help uh, describing what is the purpose of this field. Okay, so once these objects are done and we are ready to do, what we can do is we can build the app. Control Shift B. So app is, package is created. What we can do is we can also for example, earlier it was 1.000 version. We can upgrade the version. There are consequences of this version changing. We will come to that later on in some other video. So Control Shift B. So now we see that 1.001 this app is created. After that we can publish it. Control F5. So it is publishing now. It's almost done, and there it says that success, it is published. And when it is published, it is opening a new session. Mm, let me see if I can use the administrator has made changes. Start stream. Okay, this is how you publish it. Let me go back to my PPT, PowerPoint presentation. What else that I wanted to cover? Conditional table relation I wanted to show. Table relation is as I mentioned earlier, when you want to take a lookup like a country field. In country field, it should not be that someone can enter any garbage, so there should be lookup on the country list. So there we define the table relation. So let's go back to our table, control F, country region code. If you see here, the not here, country region code. So in country region code we have defined table relation, and this table relation is on existing country region. So when you click on this, it will give a lookup option and it will show the country region table. This table relation can be condition based also, conditional also. So when I say here, it is table relation is simple country region, but it can be based upon your or one of the field also. For example, a good example of this is sales line table. When you are in business central and go to sales order, it will not open, I think, and I don't want to enter password in the video. Okay, for example, if we are in sales line, the lookup on number field goes based upon whatever you selected in the type. If it is GL account, then it will go to GL account. If it is item, then it will take a lookup on the item table, and so on. So table relation need not be one liner, need not be simple table relation. It can be based upon condition also. If type is constant blank, then standard text. Else if type is constant GL account, then system creator entry is false, GL account. Okay, if it is type is item, then it will go to else if type is constant item. Okay, so this is how the table relation is defined. Okay, let's say in the we saw in the customer in field groups, when we take a look up on the customer list page, it was showing certain fields, and if you want to make some changes into that, so using table extension we can do that. For example, here's the code for that. Table extension name, then extends customer table and field groups. Let's talk about some limitations, some maximum size that are associated with table. Maximum number of characters in table name can be 30. It cannot be more than 30. For example, if we are into VS Code and we have created a table, student table, and if we want to give it name like student something, which is more than makes it more than 30 characters. So there is a red line below this, and which is saying that there is some warning, some issue with this. So if I click on that, length of the application object identifier student cannot exceed 30 characters. So name of the table can maximum 30 characters only. Similarly, the name of a field can name of the field like roll number, this can also be maximum 30 characters only. Okay, so maximum number of characters in table name is 30, maximum number of characters in field name is also 30. Maximum record size 8060 bytes, maximum number of fields in a record. We created few fields, so maximum number of fields in a record is 500. Maximum number of keys for a table is 40. Maximum size of business central key is 900 bytes. Maximum number of distinct fields per key is 16, and fields of primary key are always appended in the secondary keys. So for example, if there are three keys in the three fields in the primary key, then you can use maximum 13 fields in secondary keys. Maximum number of a non-array index is this byte. Maximum number of sub-index fields per key is 20. Maximum number of characters in text or code field is 2048. Blob size is 2 GB. So that's on the limitation side. What are the various limitations on the sizes? Now next one is learning path for business central. These are the links provided. Learning paths for getting started. If you are a beginner, if you just have started learning development in business central, so these links will be useful for you for signing up a new environment, for creating a new sandbox environment. Also I've given the links. Summarizing, here I'm concluding my this video. We discussed about the development environment for BC, how to configure the VS code, what are the various commands for publishing the code and building the app. Tables are the container of discussed data. We discussed about various types of tables, their properties, etc. Various types of tables are not really covered in this video. Maybe I'll cover those in some other video. In case you have any questions around development in business central or specific to this video, then please feel free to post those and I'll try to answer those as soon as possible. I hope this you like this video. In case that's the case, then please consider subscribing to my channel so that you can get update whenever I create new videos. Looking forward to see you in the next video. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Okay.